My name is Claire Whitfield. I'm 29 years old. And the night my older brother stood up at Thanksgiving dinner in front of 34 people and called me the family's biggest disappointment, he did it with a glass of Merlot in one hand and a grin so wide you'd think he was giving a toast at his own coronation. He tapped the crystal with a butter knife. He cleared his throat like a man about to deliver a keynote. And then he said, with the warmth of someone reading a verdict, that he wanted to take a moment to be honest about something everybody in this family has been too polite to say. He looked directly at me. He said it was time I heard the truth, that a 29-year-old woman with no real career and no husband sitting at a table she didn't pay for should at least have the decency to look a little grateful. People laughed, not all of them, but enough. My stepmother smiled into her wine glass like a woman watching a plan land exactly on schedule. My father studied his mashed potatoes the way men do when they've already chosen a side but want credit for neutrality. My aunt chuckled and nudged my cousin. And my grandmother, God rest her selective memory, whispered loud enough for 3 people to hear. Well, somebody had to say it. Nobody in that room thought they were being cruel. That was the version of me they had been rehearsing for years. The drifting younger sister, the one still figuring things out, the cautionary tale they needed so the golden child could shine brighter by comparison. I didn't flip the table. I didn't cry. I set my napkin beside my plate, pushed my chair back, and walked to the hallway to get my coat. My brother called after me with a laugh. "Come on, Claire, it's a joke. You're always so sensitive." I turned around in the doorway and said one sentence. "I'll remember you said that." 3 weeks later, the Sunday before Christmas, my brother called me 4 times before noon. By the 3rd voicemail, the confidence was gone. By the 4th, there was something I had never heard from him before. Fear. "Claire, I need you to call me back. We have to talk about the house. Please." Before I tell you what he said, and what crumbled after I walked out of that dining room, tell me what time it is where you are right now, and where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. The version my family sold to everyone was clean, simple, and designed to make me small. Claire still lives in that little apartment. Claire freelances or whatever. Claire doesn't really have a career, she just does something on a computer. Meanwhile, my brother Derek is the success story. Derek Whitfield, 34, top producing real estate agent in the greater Nashville area, face on bus benches, name on closing gifts, handshake so firm it should be registered as a weapon. Derek bought our father a Lexus for his 60th birthday. Derek renovated the family lake house in Hendersonville after our mother passed. Derek married a former pageant queen named Tamsin, who matched everything in their home to a single shade of grage. Derek was proof the Whitfield name meant something, and I was proof that sometimes families just have one of those. The truth was quieter, more expensive, and entirely dependent on no one ever pulling back the curtain. I moved back to Nashville 3 years ago, after our mother died. Pancreatic cancer. 14 months from diagnosis to funeral. I came home to help sort the estate, comfort my father, and handle the things nobody else wanted to touch, the medical bills still arriving after she was gone, the insurance disputes, the mortgage company calling about a payment that bounced during the worst month of his life. I planned to stay a few weeks, then the weeks turned into months, because every time I tried to leave, another crack opened. What no one in my family talked about publicly was that my father had been financially underwater long before Mom got sick. Gerald Whitfield was a retired contractor who had spent 30 years building other people's homes and managing his own money like a man trying to fill a swimming pool with a garden hose. He had a small pension, a house with a second mortgage he probably never should have taken, mounting credit card debt, and a deep unwillingness to let anyone see him struggle. When Mom's illness hit, whatever safety net existed was gone. Insurance covered some of it. The rest arrived in envelopes with red type and deadlines that didn't care about grief. Derek's solution was to throw money at the surface. He paid for the funeral, which was beautiful and theatrical, and cost more than it needed to, because Derek understood that generosity is most effective when it's visible. He handled the Lexus, the lake house renovation, and a few mortgage payments early on, making sure each one was announced at family gatherings like a quarterly earnings report. What Derek did not do was manage any of the actual chaos underneath. That was me. I worked remotely as a financial systems consultant. I helped small companies, family businesses, and regional contractors organize their back-office operations. The billing, the payroll processing, the tax compliance, the vendor management, the parts of running a business that nobody wants to do and everybody needs done. I was good at it because I had the patience for detail that my family mistook for a lack of ambition. You can't put spreadsheets on a bus bench, so in their minds, it didn't count. The first thing I discovered when I started helping my father was that his finances were not messy. They were catastrophic. He had missed 2 quarterly tax estimates. His homeowner's insurance had lapsed without him realizing. There were medical bills and collections he hadn't opened. One credit card was accruing interest at 28% on a balance he thought he'd paid off. And the second mortgage, the one he'd taken out 5 years earlier to fund what he vaguely called improvements, was on a variable rate that had adjusted twice. I sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of envelopes and felt the floor tilt. So, I started fixing things. Quietly, methodically, the way I fix everything because, in my family, the only safe way to help was to be invisible while doing it. I negotiated a payment plan with the hospital billing department. I caught the insurance lapse and reinstated the policy with back premiums out of my own checking account. I set up auto pay on the utilities so nothing else slipped. I contacted the credit card company, explained the situation, and got the interest rate reduced. I reorganized his tax filings with a CPA I found through a professional contact, and I covered the CPA's fee because my father's pride would not have survived asking Derek for money he'd have to explain. Over 30 months, the amount I personally spent keeping my father's household from collapsing crossed $87,000. That's not including my unpaid time. That's cash. My credit card. My savings. My emergency fund that no longer existed. Some of it went to Dad's bills directly. Some went to preventing disasters that would have cost 10 times more if they'd been allowed to detonate. And some went to Derek. Because here's the part that would have ended Thanksgiving dinner a lot differently if I'd said it out loud. The lake house renovation that Derek so generously funded. The one he talked about at every barbecue, every church potluck, every holiday dinner, like a man describing his Nobel Prize. He didn't pay for it, not fully. Derek came to me privately 2 years ago and said the renovation had gone over budget. He said the contractor surprised him with change orders. He said Tamsin had upgraded the fixtures. He said he was stretched thin because he'd had a slow quarter and 2 deals had fallen through. He asked me to lend him $40,000. He said he'd pay me back within 6 months once his pipeline closed. I gave it to him because I believed him. And because I was raised in a family where saying no to the favorite child meant becoming the difficult one. He never paid me back, not a dollar. When I mentioned it 8 months later, gently, over the phone, he laughed and said, "Come on, Claire. I spent that money improving the family lake house. You benefit from it too. That's not a loan, that's an investment in family. Families don't keep a ledger." I heard that sentence and felt something shift inside me that never shifted back. The thing about being the invisible support beam in a family is that nobody notices the beam. They notice the chandelier. Derek was the chandelier. He was bright and public and decorative, and everyone complimented him when they walked into the room. I was buried in the ceiling, holding weight no one wanted to see. And my stepmother, Val, made sure the hierarchy stayed that way. Val married my father 18 months after my mother died. She was pleasant in the way that people are pleasant when they've studied the performance of warmth without ever actually feeling it. She was polite to me in public and surgically dismissive in private. She rearranged the house to erase my mother within a month of moving in. She treated my old bedroom like a storage inconvenience. And she spent the last 2 years making sure my father understood that his household had one child who had made it and one who was still finding herself. She never said it harshly. She didn't need to. Poison works best at low doses over long periods. What changed was not one single moment but a slow accumulation of clarity that came to a head the week before Thanksgiving. I overheard Val on the phone with someone. I don't know who, maybe her sister, laughing about how sweet it was that my father still let me hang around. she said. And I'm not paraphrasing. Some birds just never leave the nest. Derek thinks we should push her a bit. Gerald won't do it himself, so we might need to help things along. I stood in the hallway with my laptop bag over my shoulder and a vendor reconciliation for my father's insurance company still open on the screen. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt awake. That night I started documenting. Not out of rage. Out of precision. I built a spreadsheet that tracked every dollar I had spent on my father's household, Derek's renovation loan, medical bill interventions, emergency payments, software I'd subscribed to on his behalf, and professional services I'd personally contracted. I included dates, amounts, payment confirmations, screenshots of texts where Derek asked me to handle something, voicemails from my father asking me to sort this mess out while he was at a doctor's appointment. The total made me push back from the desk and stare at the wall for 10 minutes. Then I added a separate column for unpaid labor hours and applied the lowest billing rate I charge my commercial clients. The number was ugly. The full picture was grotesque. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I secured a long-term contract with a logistics company based in Portland, Oregon. A client I'd been working with part-time offered me a full engagement, enough income to move, rent my own place, and finally separate my survival from my family's mythology. I signed the contract that night. I put a deposit on a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood in southeast Portland. I told no one. Over the next week, I moved my things out in stages so gradual they were invisible. My father didn't notice because he never entered my room. Val didn't notice because she had never cared what was in it. Derek didn't notice because noticing me was never part of his operating system. Thanksgiving arrived. I walked in with a pie I'd baked from my mother's recipe and a calm I had rehearsed in the car. The table was set for 34 because Val loved large gatherings the way some people love mirrors. Extended family, neighbors, Derek's colleagues, the church couple, and the real estate photographer who followed Derek around like a publicist. I sat at the far end of the table because that was where I always sat, the kids' end. I was 29 years old sitting between a 14-year-old cousin and an empty chair. Derek stood after the turkey was carved. He dinged his glass. And he delivered his little speech about honesty and disappointment and how a woman my age should look grateful. The table erupted in laughter and polite discomfort and the kind of silence that lets cruelty know it has permission to continue. My father said nothing. Val sipped. My grandmother whispered. And I walked out. I'll remember you said that. That was the last sentence anyone in that room heard from me for 3 weeks. The first few days, nobody called because they assumed I was sulking. That's how entitled families process boundaries. Silence from the person they hurt is interpreted as weakness, not warning. They expected me to come back soft and apologetic by Sunday. I didn't come back at all. The first crack appeared the following Tuesday. The electricity bill on my father's house, which had been set to autopay from my card for 19 months, bounced. Not because I canceled it dramatically. I had simply closed the card as part of my financial cleanup. The power company sent a warning notice. My father called me once and left a confused voicemail. Claire, honey, there's something funny going on with the electric bill. I think your card might have been attached somehow. Can you take a look when you get a chance? Funny. Somehow. When you get a chance. The language of a man who has never had to understand the machinery that keeps his lights on. Wednesday, the homeowner's insurance auto renewal failed. The premium had been split across 2 payments, and the second one, the one linked to an account I had quietly funded for over a year, did not process. I know this because the insurance company emailed me a lapse notice, since I was technically the contact on file. I did not respond. Thursday, my father called twice. Val called once. Derek texted me a single line. Dad's freaking out about bills. Can you just log in and fix whatever you did? Whatever I did. As if financial infrastructure maintained itself, and I had somehow sabotaged an otherwise self-sustaining system. I did not reply. Friday brought the real earthquake. Derek's mortgage payment on the lake house was due. What nobody in the family knew, because Derek's pride was as architectural as his hair, was that Derek had refinanced that property 12 months earlier, and my father had co-signed. Not only co-signed, My father was listed as a co-borrower because Derek's debt-to-income ratio was too high to qualify a loan. I knew this because I had found the paperwork while organizing my father's financial files. I had said nothing at the time because saying something would have been making it a thing. But the monthly payment on that refinanced mortgage was $3,400. And for the last 7 months, I had been covering $1,800 of it. Not because anyone asked me clearly. Because Derek had started Venmoing me partial amounts with notes like Lake House share, thanks sis, and dad's portion, I'll grab it next month. Next month never came. I stopped those payments when I left. The $1,800 didn't arrive in December. The mortgage company sent a late notice to both Derek and my father. That's when the calls started changing tone. Saturday morning, Derek left his first voicemail. It was breezy, performative, the voice of a man who still believed he was managing a minor inconvenience. Hey Claire, just checking in. Wanted to make sure everything's good with the lake house payment. I think there might have been a mix-up this month. Give me a call. By Saturday evening, my father called. His voice was different. Not angry, bewildered. Claire, your brother says there's a problem with the lake house mortgage. He says you are handling part of the payment? I don't understand what's going on. Can you please call me back tonight? I did not call back. Sunday morning, Val called. She had never called me before. She used a voice I can only describe as customer service with an edge, polite enough to maintain deniability, sharp enough to communicate that I was being summoned. Claire, hi, it's Val. Listen, your father is very upset, and I think it would be really mature of you to call him back and sort through whatever misunderstanding is happening. We're all family here. There's no reason for this kind of drama over the holidays. Drama. The woman who had called me a bird who never left the nest. The woman who had spent 2 years engineering my irrelevance. Now she wanted maturity. Monday, the certified letter arrived at my father's house. The mortgage company sent a formal notice of late payment with a 15-day grace period warning. My father called me 3 times. Derek called 5 times. On the 5th call, he left a voicemail that was stripped of every ounce of charm he'd ever manufactured. Claire, this is serious. Dad is on the loan. If this goes late, it hits his credit. It hits my credit. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't funny. Call me back. Trying to prove isn't funny. These are the words of a man discovering that the person he publicly humiliated is also the person who has been quietly holding his world together. I did not call back. Tuesday evening, I texted Derek a single image. A cropped screenshot from my spreadsheet showing 7 months of his mortgage payments with my card, next to the original $40,000 transfer for his renovation, next to the running total. No caption. No message. Just the numbers. He read it within 2 minutes. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared 4 times. Then he typed, "Where did you get this?" I replied, "From my records." Because unlike this family, I keep a ledger. He didn't respond for 3 hours. Then he sent the longest text he'd ever written me. He said I was being vindictive. He said he had always planned to pay me back, but things got complicated. He said the Thanksgiving speech was a joke, and I was overreacting. He said if I let the mortgage go late, it would ruin Dad's credit, and that would be on me, not on the man who co-signed a loan he couldn't afford. Not on the brother who quietly shifted his financial burden onto his younger sister while mocking her at the dinner table. On me, the person who finally stopped carrying it. I sent back one line. You told 34 people I had no career and nothing to show for my life. Now you're texting me at midnight because you can't cover your own mortgage. I'm not vindictive, Derek. I'm just not invisible anymore, he called immediately. I let it ring. Wednesday, my father showed up at my apartment. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving Nashville, but I was still in my old place finishing the move. He stood at the door looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He was holding a paper grocery bag with a jar of my mother's peach preserves that he'd found in the back of a pantry shelf. He said he didn't come to fight. He said he was confused. He asked if we could sit down. I let him in. I made coffee, And I put a printed copy of the full document on the kitchen table. 41 pages. Cover sheet. Timeline. Amounts categorized by type. Medical bill interventions. Household expenses. Insurance premiums. Tax resolution fees. CPA costs. Derek's renovation loan. Derek's mortgage payments. Screenshots of every text from both of them asking me to handle something. Voicemails. A conservative estimate of the unpaid hours I had spent reorganizing his financial life. And on the last page, a single screenshot of Derek's Thanksgiving speech, transcribed from the video that Tamsin had proudly posted on Instagram, captioned "Blessed to have honest people in our lives" with a turkey emoji. My father opened the document the way people open medical test results, slowly, hoping the first page would tell him it wasn't serious. It was serious. He flipped to the dollar amount. His mouth opened, then closed. Then he looked at me with an expression I had never seen from him before, something between confusion and the very first edge of shame. "You paid all this?" "I paid more than that," I said. "That's just what I could document with receipts." He flipped more pages. His hands shook slightly. Not from age. From the weight of seeing your own mythology dismantled in columns and rows. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him for a long time. "Dad, I told you. Every time I said I'm handling it, that was me telling you. Every time I said don't worry about the insurance, that was me telling you. You just decided that handling it meant I was being helpful. Not that I was spending my savings keeping your life from falling apart." He set down the papers. His jaw worked the way it does when he's trying not to lose control. "Derek," he started. "Derek owes me $40,000 that he spent on a lake house. He tells everyone he paid for himself," I said. "And he's been shorting the mortgage payment on a property that has your name on the loan. If it goes 30 days late, your credit takes the hit, not his. Because that's how he set it up." My father's face went from pale to gray. He asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What do you want me to do?" I pulled out a second envelope. Inside was a list of resources, a housing counselor, a credit union that offered debt consolidation, a family law attorney in case the cosigner situation needed formal resolution, and the contact information for a bookkeeper who could take over the financial management I had been doing unpaid. "This is everything you need," I said, "but I'm not managing it anymore." He stared at the envelope like it was a door to a room he didn't want to enter. Then he tried the line. "Claire, we're family. You can't just walk away from family." I set my coffee cup down. "Dad, I didn't walk away from family. I walked away from a system that needed me small so everyone else could feel big. You let Derek humiliate me in front of 34 people because it was easier than correcting him. Val has spent 2 years erasing me from this household, and you never said a word. And the whole time, I was the one keeping the electricity on, the insurance active, and your son's mortgage from going into default. I'm not the one who walked away from family. I'm the one who finally stopped pretending this was one." He didn't have an answer. He sat with the peach preserves between us and the document open to the page showing Derek's renovation loan, and he looked at his hands. Then he asked, quietly, "Are you moving?" "Yes," I said. "Where?" "I don't think that matters right now," I said. He nodded once, got up, took the preserves out of the bag, and set them on my counter, left the document on the table, and walked out without closing the door all the way, which was the most honest thing he'd done in years, leaving something slightly open and hoping someone else would finish it for him. Derek tried once more. He sent an email on Christmas Eve, titled Family Resolution, in which he proposed that I return to Nashville for a meeting where we could discuss roles and responsibilities going forward. He said he was willing to acknowledge that communication had broken down. He said he understood I felt underappreciated. He said he was prepared to reimburse me in installments once his Q1 pipeline materialized. At the bottom he wrote, "Let's not let pride ruin what Mom built." I stared at that line for a long time. My mother built nothing that these people hadn't spent 3 years dismantling. She built warmth and patience and a home where people showed up honestly. What remained after her was a performance of family, run by people who confused visibility with contribution and silence with consent. I replied with 4 sentences. I am not returning to Nashville for a meeting. I am not resuming any financial support. The documents I provided contain everything needed to move forward without me. Future communication should be personal and respectful, or it shouldn't happen at all. He responded the next morning. So you're fine just watching everything fall apart? I wrote back. Nothing is falling apart because I left, Derek. Things are falling apart because they were never as solid as you told everyone they were. You just couldn't see the cracks because I was filling them. He didn't reply. January came cold and quiet. I landed in Portland with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a savings account that was finally being used for me. My apartment had tall windows and no one else's crisis humming in the background. I made coffee in the morning and didn't check my phone for catastrophes. It felt foreign at first. Toxic families train you to mistake silence for danger. You keep listening for the next emergency, the next demand, the next favor disguised as love. It took weeks before I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. The lake house went to a short sale in late February. I know because public records don't care about family pride. My father managed to keep his house, barely, with the credit union's help. Val, to her credit or her self-preservation, got a part-time job for the first time since the wedding. Derek's bus bench ads quietly disappeared around March. His Instagram went private. Tamsin stopped posting. My grandmother called me once, in early spring. She didn't ask how I was. She said the family was struggling, and that my mother would be heartbroken to see her children divided like this. I said, Grandma, Mom would be heartbroken to know her daughter spent $87,000 keeping this family afloat while her son stood up at Thanksgiving and called her a disappointment. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Well, I didn't know all that. That, I said, is exactly the problem. Months passed. Portland became home in ways Nashville never had, even when I was born there. My work grew. One contract led to referrals. I built an LLC with real boundaries, deposits up front, and a scope of work that didn't include emotional labor. I adopted a cat named Walter who liked to sit on my invoices while I worked. I started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. The quiet was not empty. It was the sound of a life that belonged entirely to me. In August, my brother sent me a text that contained no request, no explanation, no justification. Just 5 words. You were right. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply that day. Or the next. On the 3rd day I wrote, Thank you. That matters. But it doesn't change what I need right now, which is distance. He sent back 1 word. Understood. My father mailed me something in September. A small box, no note, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was a recipe card. My mother's handwriting, sweet potato casserole. At the bottom, in faded blue ink, she had written, Don't let Claire add too many marshmallows. She always adds too many marshmallows. I laughed until I had to put the card down because my hands were shaking. Then I cried in a way I hadn't allowed myself to cry since the funeral. Not because the card fixed anything, because it proved that somewhere underneath all the noise and cruelty and silence, there had once been a woman who knew me. And she had written my name with love, in a place nobody thought to erase. I framed the card. It sits on a shelf next to Walter's favorite napping spot. People ask me if I regret not helping one last time. The question sounds compassionate, but it carries the same old trap inside it. It assumes the most moral person in the story is the one who sacrifices again. I don't believe that anymore. If someone calls you family only when they need your money, your labor, or your quiet tolerance, they are not protecting a relationship, they are protecting a system. If your brother needs you to be a failure so his success has contrast, that is not sibling love. That is branding. And if a table full of 34 people can laugh while you are humiliated and then panic 3 weeks later when your support vanishes, the panic is your answer. It tells you exactly what you were to them. Not a sister. Not a daughter. A subsidy. I was never the disappointment. I was the invisible infrastructure. The emergency fund with a heartbeat. The quiet hand that kept the ceiling from caving in while everyone toasted the chandelier. My brother's greatest mistake wasn't the Thanksgiving speech. It was believing the woman he mocked in front of everyone would still be there when the bill came due. The last thing Val ever sent me was a Christmas card, 6 months after everything settled. It was generic, store-bought, signed Val and Gerald in her handwriting only. No note, no acknowledgement, just a card, as if sending seasonal stationery could close a moral debt. I recycled it. My sister-in-law Tamsin texted me once in October. She said Derek had changed. She said he was doing therapy. She said he talked about me more now than he ever had when I was there. I told her I was glad he was getting help. I meant it. Healing doesn't require my presence, and forgiveness doesn't require my return. Derek and I speak now, occasionally, not like movie siblings, more like two people testing whether honesty can survive where performance used to live. He calls sometimes with real questions about finances, about organizing his books, about how to read a mortgage statement. I answer when I choose to. That distinction matters more than anything. I still have the screenshot. The Instagram post. Derek mid-toast, glass raised, table gleaming, Tamsin beaming in the background, my chair already empty. Caption blessed to have honest people in our lives. He thought he was documenting my irrelevance. What he actually captured was the last second before his safety net put on her coat and drove away. So no, I don't regret leaving. I regret staying long enough to believe that being needed and being loved were the same thing. But I will never regret the spreadsheet, the silence, the document, the distance, or the morning I woke up in Portland and realized the only person's electricity I was responsible for was my own. My brother called me a disappointment in front of 34 people on Thanksgiving night. By Christmas, he couldn't make his mortgage payment without me, and by then, I was already gone.